Hitbox KO. Hello everyone. It's Jamie and Niall this time. So
who would have guessed?
This is a brand new podcast. It's called Hitbox, and it's a podcast where we exist in boxes talking about hits. Niall, or shall I refer to you with your online alias? What we're feeling here?
What? Big Naz? Nah, we can just stick to Niall. I don't think the potential listeners don't want to hear about the exploits of Big Naz, whatever that happens to be.
Okay, Niall, who are you? What are you doing here?
Ooh, I'm one of the dedicated openly beta sandbox fanboys. You know, there from the beginning. If you ever see the comments, you'll probably see a shout out from Big Naz. Got a shout out a few weeks back as well, with pleasant surprise making my day. But no, I know the.
Sorry.
I'll say I know the openly beta boys from 7 years back now. It's been a while.
No,
but I like a good. Yeah, from the Colchester Sixth Form college days, and yeah. So I've got a nice little mix of hits today that should be a lot of fun to go through. It's good.
Oh, that is a very scary time period. I don't like it.
I forcibly dragged you down memory lane right there.
So basically, people who are watching, if you are on our $1,000 a day Patreon, like Niall, you too will be able to appear in an episode of Hitbox. It's one of our lesser tiers, but affordable, you know. So we're going to start off with a quick game. This is a very unoriginal game, but I love the concept of this. It's called Pokédex Entry or Real Animal.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go through a little selection of Pokédex entries, and you have to tell me if I've just read out an actual animal that exists on Earth, or if it's actually found within a game, a Pokemon. We're going to start off with an example. So the first one I'm going to read out to you. It is said to live in a gap in the spatial dimension parallel to ours. It appears in mythology. Niall, is that a Pokemon?
Is that Giratina?
No.
Oh,
so close.
Shows I know nothing.
So close.
I know nothing.
So close.
Unknown?
It's Palkia.
Oh.
Bonus point if you can get the Pokemon or real animal, by the way. So that's an example. So I'll give you another one now. Okay. I've been reading through these. I made these earlier, and I'm a little bit concerned that some of them are a little bit too difficult, but we'll see how it goes. So it's covered in a slime that keeps its skin moist, allowing it to stay on land for days without drying up.
I'm going to say real animal on that.
That's a Pokemon. That is Pukimiku.
Oh, it's going so well. It's going so well already.
I think that one was a little bit difficult because it does sound very, very feasible.
See, I'm sticking to the principle that the more horrifying the entry, the more likely it is that it's a Pokemon. So that seemed way too factual for me to think that it was going to be one.
So true.
But we continue nonetheless.
It performs an unusual headstand to draw in water from its surroundings, leaving itself vulnerable to attacks.
I'm just going to go regular animal again. Why not? Let's go regular animal again.
That is a regular animal. What animal do you think that is?
Actually, no clue, unfortunately. I have not been watching my David Attenborough these days, and
That is
it really shows.
it's a fog basking beetle, which I feel like I've only ever heard of that on David Attenborough.
I was going to say, it's not like they're putting that in the GCSE geography curriculum right there. It's
Extra
like,
points.
how come you don't know that?
Extra points, extra points. Well, you have to go a little bit obscure because if you go like, house cat, there's not a lot of interesting things that you can really talk about a house cat. The thing it sounds like a Pokemon. All right, next one. It will investigate and may carry anything it finds away, leading to many losing items that are left unattended.
I'm going to go Pokemon.
It's a real animal. It's a coconut crab. I don't know what coconut crab is.
It's just brutal.
It's a coconut crab.
Ancient crabs, all I can think of is that, like, the dancing crab reference at that point. It's just like, oh well.
It sprays toxic gas from its mouth and fingers. If the gas engulfs you, the toxins will seep in all the way down to your bones.
Well, that sounds terrifying. And based on the logic that I've already decided, I'm going to go Pokemon because it just seems terrifying.
It's actually a Pokemon.
Because it has fingers, so it can't be, coughing or wheezing, which would have been my traditional go-tos in this regards. So
think of like
I don't know.
the most disgusting Pokemon that exists.
Like muck.
I guess that is pretty gross. It's actually Garbodor.
Or Trabador. Oh yeah. The one that was literal rubbish.
Can we just
almost as good as the keychain Pokemon?
Oh yeah, Klefki. Can we just
Classic.
appreciate? That's really disturbing. Like, imagine like going against a real like a trainer. Like, all right, let's have a quick battle. Someone freaking brings out Garbodor. Like, nah, have my money. I'm off.
Imagine how terrifying it'd be if you lived in that world. It's like it's bin day. You're just dropping off your bins at the end of the street, pick up the wrong one by accident. It's actually a living thing, and now you've got poison in your bones. Just
okay, it's just got a couple more now. Its sharp horn on its nose is often lost in battle. If this happens, another is made in its internal pouch.
Is that a Kangaskhan?
It's not actually. That is an animal. That is a ribbon worm.
I was like, Kangaskhan has two horns. I think it doesn't have one on its nose because I was inclined to go with like Rhydon, but I'm like, Rhydon doesn't have a pouch, so I'm getting 0 marks in here. I could flip a coin in each one and probably get a better outcome here. This is really not looking good on my end.
The last one I'm just gonna not do, and the reason for that is because it's just too hard. I've realised that this one is way too generic. I can try it if you want. I might as well. It's the last one.
Okay. Go for it. I can't get any worse at this stage. Like low score already.
It eats berries non-stop, a habit that has made it more resilient than it looks. It will show up on farms, searching for yet more berries.
Is it that Pokemon that has like the hand on its tail?
It's not
The
actually.
purple one? I forgot what it's called.
Apom.
Yeah, Apom. I was going to go with that, but is it a real life one?
Pokemon. It's Pokemon. It's Squovet, which is a squirrel Pokemon.
Oh, is that the one that ends up having like the life preserve around it at the end, or is that a complete? See, the problem with me is I played up to Generation 4 and skipped 5, 6, and 7. I think.
Okay.
So there's like a big gap between a lot of these.
Oh no! In fairness,
hasn't worked to my benefit.
I will say that I know every Pokemon from Gen 4 and backwards. I have played every gen, but like, I was an actual child on Gen 4, and you get way more into like all the names and stuff, and the older I got, the less I cared about the names, mainly because I kept calling them like nicknames and stuff, so you just don't remember them. So like piece of poo. Anyway, that was Pokédex entry.
That one's, I was gonna say, that was definitely the HM slave of the team.
Yeah.
Just like doesn't even get a proper name. He just gets treated like garbage. It's like
I literally I called my HM slaves like 1, 2, 3. It's just all Bidoof, yeah.
Oh, it's just put some respect on Bidoof's name right there.
Okay, so
how dare you disrespect him like that?
The next section of Hitbox, I wanna know about your childhood, specifically video games.
Well, it's a good thing that video games were a big part of my childhood. Happy coincidence.
So, I asked Niall earlier to name, roughly a top 5 of his childhood games, and I wanna go through them. You probably don't have them in a rank order though, right? Because that would be quite hard.
These are not ranked. Yeah, there's quite a jumbled mix. I more wanted them to represent different experiences that they coalesce with.
Mm-hmm.
In a weird way, I'll explain it with one of them, how they all seem to fulfill a distinct role when it comes to your memories of video games as a child.
Give us your first one.
So, okay, I am going to go with Spider-Man PlayStation 1 from the year 2000, made by Neversoft, people who made Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I believe. It was made in the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater engine.
Really? And, interesting.
Yeah. And it fulfilled two great things. One, it's the greatest comic book game ever made, purely for the fact that it includes the greatest comic book character ever made. And you say, well, it's Spider-Man because it's called Spider-Man. But no, has such a long list of alternative costumes in the game. And one of them is from a story where Spider-Man enters the Fantastic Four. He hasn't been announced yet, and he loses his suit. So he wears the traditional blue Fantastic Four suit, but he can't wear the Spider-Man mask. So he puts a bag over his head. And in the process, births the greatest hero of all time, the Bombastic Bagman, which is the best one that's in that game. You have to play as Bombastic Bagman.
All right, I'm immediately Googling that.
Oh, mate, the classic Bombastic Bagman. It just rolls off the tongue.
That is so funny.
There's so many costumes in that game, and some of them are real, like, deep dives where, like, Spider-Man gets, like, cosmic powers is one of the costumes that he has.
Oh,
There's
wow.
a real weird collection of bunch from this 2000 game. And they made a sequel in late 2001, something like Spider-Man Enter Electro, but it was at that point, because, as a child, you don't really follow the news, especially considering that at this time, it came out in 2000, but I was probably playing it 2001, 2002. I'm 5 years old playing this. I barely know what I'm doing. I am mashing the controller, just praying that something will work. But it's that, and also, I will argue to the ends of the earth that Spider-Man PlayStation 1 is the single greatest survival horror game of all time.
I'm going to need... Right. Talk to me. Why?
Okay, so you get to So Venom's a little bit creepy in that game. He hits you with that classic, like, warriors come out and play, like, bottle jing that comes from that movie. And he's creepy enough because he's, like, teleporting around. He's being all sneaky. But at the end of the game, you find out that Dr. Octopus and Carnage are trying to take over the world with an army of symbiotes. And you beat Carnage, you beat Doc Ock, and then it goes to a cutscene. You're like, oh, you think this is fine, his exact words is like, it's all fine now, Spidey. You can take a breather. It's all good. And then Carnage merges with Dr. Octopus and creates Monster Ock.
No.
And Monster Ock has the most horrifying sound effects that have ever been put into a video game, where it just keeps yelling "die, die" over again in distorted, like, sounds. And and it begins this chase sequence where you have to run away from him. But the problem is it's PlayStation 1 and camera controls for everything that's in 3D outside of like Mario 64 is absolutely garbage. So you're fighting the game trying to get away from this terrifying thing. And keep in mind, if it captures you, the game instantly game overs and you get stabbed to pieces. This is a game rated E for everyone, but those like Doc Ock arms just stab your body repeatedly. It is a terrifying experience.
That is.
And you spend the entire... And it's the scariest 2.5 minutes of video games I think I've ever played. And I played it at the right kind of age where it impacts you a bit more. So I think the scariest movie of all time is the 1990s adaptation of Roald Dahl's The Witches, where they peel back and they turn into these like monstrosities. And I remember watching that as a kid and just being horrified by that movie.
It's interesting,
in the same way,
stuff like that that freaks you out as a kid. It still kind of freaks you out. Like you kind of still have that experience locked in your brain of I remember how terrifying that was.
And the visual experience of Spider-Man PS1 has obviously declined quite a bit. Not many games at that time hold up, especially when in that early stage of transitioning to 3D. But the audio, those audio sounds, man, are still... You could play them in the middle of nowhere and I'd be on alert, man. That would be fight or flight. Just terrifying.
I do think... I mean, yeah, I agree that I think PlayStation 1 games, that era... that is the generation that has held up the least. I am not interested in seeing retro throwbacks to that art style in any way. Like,
I mean, I don't think anybody did, because you look at like the NES Classic, everyone's hyped, everyone buys it.
Yeah.
SNES Classic, everyone buys it. Like PS1, it's like within 2 months, so you can get one for 20 quid, and it's like nobody has any interest in playing these games, unfortunately. But there's some good games on there, but
so I'm looking at pictures of Monster Rock, and the one thing that art style does lend well to is just terrifying creatures, because I feel like the 3D models of that time were kind of, even if they weren't supposed to be horrifying, they looked horrifying. So when you've got something that like Nemesis, I think looks really creepy. It's just like a load of cubes and triangle pieces.
It's just a blur. It's a blur with like a yellowish head.
Yeah, but it's kind of freaky. Yeah.
I think it's similar with Nemesis and Monster Rock, how it's like the sound effects that you were like you hear the stars, and you're like, maybe it's time to get out of here, and you hear die, and you're like, I need to run away. This very second, this thing is terrifying. But no, a fantastic little game. And it's one of those things where even now, when Spider-Man 2018 came out, we all played that and that was all fantastic. There's still a bit of me that holds so much nostalgia to the original one, being able to see, like, look what we've come from that kind of first attempt into the 3D to, like, now where it's just these ridiculous open worlds. And, like, I remember the old ones where you had a couple of buildings and the rest of it was just fog. Like, that was the entire world view.
I think... I can't actually remember. I've never owned a Spider-Man game, but I did play around a friend's house, and it was either the PlayStation 2. I think it was probably the PlayStation a Spider-Man game on PlayStation 2. I can't remember which one. And I remember, like you said, it felt so fun, with the hilarious web slinging on nothing, all the time sort of thing.
You're just practically flying.
But it is, fog. I remember the fog.
Yeah.
Just everywhere. Yeah.
I think it kind of works in a way because it makes it quite atmospheric. Was it like some of the few early Silent Hills, like the fog's part of the story, but they also used the fog to hide any kind of issues when it comes to draw distance. It's like, just make fog. Now everyone will believe that. The level is this tiny square, but if we put fog around it, everything will be absolutely fine.
And fog's still like used in games. I think only really recently fog has stopped being used, to be honest. Like even PlayStation 3 games had loads of fog in it to hide stuff. That's pretty funny.
I mean, I haven't got anything against fog. If I see a fog in game, I'll be like, you know what? I appreciate that they've put in that little touch. You know,
I mean, I'd prefer fog than like just black.
that or just like a superimposed 2D image that's just been put in to look like a background. You just can't see it behind an invisible wall. Classic.
Right, give me another top childhood game.
We're going backwards. We're going back to the 1990s. Oh, I feel old. Going to Sled Storm, which is a 1990. There was a sequel for PlayStation 2, but I'm talking about the PlayStation 1 version.
Okay.
And it was a snowmobile racing game with a soundtrack that was done by Rob Zombie, who is this really like edgy nu metal like singer or act. And it was just an absolute blast. And it was one of those ones where I would sit around and play my older brother, and we'd play that game and try to beat our high scores on it. And I don't know why we ever got it, because at that age, any games you play aren't, especially at the age I got it, you never bought a game out of your own volition. It was just, this is what your family thought you would like, and this is what you've got as a Christmas gift.
Yep.
And ended up with Sled Storm. Sled Storm, absolutely cracking game.
Hey, I'm watching a video right
shortcuts.
now. This is a surprisingly good-looking PlayStation 1 game. Like, the animations are actually pretty good.
1999. Yeah, because the races, also for some reason it's a snowmobile game, but all the snowmobiles are just called sleds. I don't know. I'm not an expert on snowmobiles, if that's the right kind of use of the term. But they'll go into the corners and you'll see the models for the races proper shift with the weight. So they actually felt hefty. It didn't feel like these were just models floating on top of like artificial snow that you get with a lot of games. For 1999,
this was pretty nice, honestly. Yeah, wow.
Oh, blew my mind. Sled Storm PlayStation 1. I think I have less ability to associate that with anything greater, and more just a distinct game that I remember growing up, because I wanted to go with a couple of outside the box options. And that's what actually takes me to my third pick. So I think it's a universal experience, right? So essentially, the Nintendo DS came out 2005, 2000, maybe a little bit later. But it got to the point where by the late 2000s...
Came out in 2004.
Nintendo... 2004.
Yeah.
That's fine, because it got to the point where seemingly everybody had one. Like, not everyone had one at launch. I didn't have one until like 2008, because Game Boy Advance SP, close to my heart.
Oh, yeah, same, yeah.
The good stuff. It was one of those experiences where one of them was about how in the school environment you would have a game that everyone would all play at the same time. So the easy option to invoke with that is playing Mario Kart DS on school trips on the bus.
Awesome.
Because Nintendo's fantastic, I think it was just called Wireless Play, something like that, where only one game cartridge was needed. Yeah, download play. One cartridge was needed, and you would have 4, 5, 6, I don't exactly remember, but you would have everybody all playing each other on a school bus. And we were situated, like geographically in the UK, it meant a lot of times if we ever went to France on like a French school trip, you would drive to Dover, get the ferry across, and you could all do it in a day. It meant you had a lot of time on the bus. There would routinely be 4 5-hour-long bus journeys. And Mario Kart DS on the bus was a classic. But I wanted to go a slightly different route, because I think a different game can give you that experience, but with a little bit of added extra, which is just the surprise factor. And local multiplayer on one Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP with Advance Wars 1. 4 players on Advance Wars, where you would make your turn, you'd do your moves, and you would just pass that Game Boy Advance SP on to the next person. And 10, 12 minutes later, everyone's done their turns, everybody's had their thing. And everyone, like at this point, I'm like 7 or 8 years old, and we're all acting like we're Sun Tzu on the playgrounds, but no one really knows what we're doing. Nobody's got any real strategy. but you get it back to you, and you think you were going to conquer this map, and you come back and you have 1 unit left
Yeah.
that everybody else has just decided to leave you with to be nice. And if you play it like with the group of friends I had, where it was really secretive, so you don't know who had actually done what. You don't know who had really betrayed you. All you know is you're the only one with like 1 unit left, and everybody else is coming along
so
really
funny.
strong. And it's the same kind of thing as Mario Kart, where you could just enclosed and vibrant with a few people. You're all playing it at once. It's continuous action, but there's the surprise element where you just don't know what's going to happen.
I want to add to new Super Mario Brothers DS had the most like super awesome local multiplayer, completely free for everyone else as well. Like exactly like Mario Kart, like a whole load of mini games and stuff. And that same thing, like always on a bus, everyone's on a bloody DS, and everyone can play a mini game on New Super Mario Bros. DS. So awesome.
You're trying to sleep, and all you hear is like the dun dun dun, dun, and it's like, bro, like you don't need the audio
so
much.
You just brought back so much. That is so true. That is such a good. Oh yeah,
I think that's
totally.
distinctly. Like, I think that was probably a worldwide phenomenon, but we were there at the right kind of time for download play. And, you know, you look at it and, like, the Nintendo DS was, like, still quite a premium system when it launched. But 3 or 4 years later, you know, they got the cost down. And seemingly, not everybody had a DS, but it felt like everybody had a Nintendo DS.
Honestly.
And everywhere.
Everyone, there were so many, you know, traditionally, like, you know, people who wouldn't consider themselves gamers, they had DS, and they probably had all the classics on it as well. Like they, you know, Mario Kart and Super Mario Bros. At a minimum, everyone seemed to have those games. So good.
That's what's mad about the ability of Nintendo just to cross those kind of divides and sell to the casual market, because seemingly, like, you tell me I have extra homework at the end of a day when I'm 8 years old and I am storming off in a fit. But you tell me, go spend half an hour on Dr. Kawashima's brain training, and I am on that straight away.
Hey,
so that's so funny.
PictoChat was genius. Like that wouldn't work now, for multiple reasons. I mean, who needs it with phones anyway, right? But also, you know, there'd probably be some sort of like security thing and whatever. But at the time, it was like, it seemed so, maybe we were all naive and kids, but like, it seemed so humble and lovely. And you go on PictoChat and it's like, who, you know, fond memories at an airport. Like, go to an airport.
Yeah, I was going to say who was on this plane 30,000 feet in the air checking their PictoChat. Yeah,
and there's always someone. You go to a public place, like, and they had that with the 3DS with Street Pass. Genius idea, absolutely genius. Loved it. Of course, with the 3DS, it took a long time before that really took off. But yeah.
I've got a choice between, because I've kind of lost the ranking system at this point.
Whatever.
So I want to go. I've been here for however many minutes and I've already broken the format. Just quick in out. I'm going to go for another PlayStation 1 classic. You know, weirdly enough, all my games are either Game Boy Advance or PlayStation 1 when it comes to the childhood ones. I think those were just my systems. But I'm going to go Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories for the PlayStation 1. Set in ancient Egypt. It had all the character designs from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, the original series, but it was just this really random environment where, like, the grandpa was like this priest. And
what? Okay,
he was like, he was just like a shaman priest type figure in that game.
Fantastic.
Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a weird habit in the early 2000s of taking the designs that everybody knew, but sticking them in really random, non-canonical environments. So 2000, like the PlayStation 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! War of the Roses that was set in the UK. And it was a retelling of the War of the Roses, but with Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters, because somebody at Konami thought that would be a good idea. It's a really weird one if people remember that. But I'm going before that.
So there's a huge roster of characters here. You got like Bandit Keith who plays machine cards in ancient Egypt. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah, mate. What you need to understand is that the cards predate the invention of such technology. The monsters exist before that. So if anything, technology is based off Yu-Gi-Oh cards in that world, not the other way around.
What do we do about the Roid cards, or like the cars and the helicopter cards? Like, there's loads of those.
They don't exist
like
yet at that
ambulance
point.
Roid.
They don't exist at that. All we've got is the classics and like twin-headed Thunder Dragon in every single deck in that game. Anywhere you look, there's twin-headed Thunder Dragon.
So
that was a classic.
Was that a card game then? It wasn't like a spin-off. It was like actual cards then.
No, it was a full-blown card game. Like the entire gameplay experience was walk to this place, get this funky Egyptian themed tune in the background, have this like just mash A to get through this conversation to tell the plot, and then you just play the card game. But it was one of those things where it was one of the first ones to render the cards in 3D. So you're like, oh wow, look at this monster in this big like 3D environment doing its move and all that kind of stuff. It was a throwback classic to the PlayStation 1, and it beat the other kind of early 2000s anime inspired like 4Kids kind of PS1 game where I had Beyblade Let It Rip for the PlayStation 1 that is now universally considered the worst game to be released on a PlayStation 1. It was just terrible. It was just the worst thing you ever play. No. I had that. I finished that. I loved it. Little edgy 5-year-old Niall was give me one of those classic early 2000s English Saturday morning cartoon intros that were like way too edgy for their own good. And I'd be on it. Flame t-shirts, Linkin Park playing straight in.
Yu-Gi-Oh! I haven't got any experience with I know a lot about Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And they were my kind of like go-to anime type shows. Yu-Gi-Oh! So dramatic. It's so rewatchable now because it's hilarious. It's just like it's a card game, and there's so much screaming, and then there's that scene where Kaiba actually threatens to commit suicide if Yugi wins. And
yes. Because it's like, oh, the blast will hit me back, but it's like, but they're holograms. There's no physics involved. You're just threatening to kill yourself, and it's like. And what else happens? Grandpa gets sent to the hospital because he loses a card game. So it's not even a shadow game. First episode, and he's just, I need to go to the hospital because I've lost a children's card game. Just the classics, absolute classics.
And like, I'm pretty sure like didn't Pegasus like turn everyone who lost to him into stone or something?
Yeah, he traps them in what's essentially the canonical Shadow Realm, because 4Kids created the Shadow Realm in the original series as a way to circumvent the issue of death that existed within the original show. It's like, they're not there, they're just in the Shadow Realm. This is all right for your 5-year-old to watch.
Was that a censorship thing for the West?
Okay. Yeah. That's the same reason why you will occasionally see people point fingers at each other, because in the original show there's guns, but they're like, well, how do we get rid of the guns? It's like, we'll just have them point their fingers at them, and it's the most bizarre thing you could ever watch. But you never realised it as a kid, so in all fairness, they did their job, and it was 4Kids Entertainment did the dubbing, and they owned the license to it, and they must have made millions off of that show, and they didn't have to make any of the animations. They just needed to rewrite a script and do a little bit of editing and sell it to US kids on a Saturday morning. Just genius marketing play.
That really was, yeah.
And then going for my final childhood hit, just Pokemon Emerald, just Generation 3. I think 2005, because I think Ruby Sapphire was 2004, and then Emerald came out a year later. So it was either 2003, then on to 2004, or 2004, then on to 2005. And Something about Generation 3, man. Just, I know there's always those jokes about like 7.8, too much water, and there's way too much water within that map. But there's just so many classic designs that never got overused, because you can say like Charizard's a classic design, but we've got like 1,000 different variants of Charizard in the last few games. And it's like, I just don't care anymore. Like, it's only so many times you can feed me Charizard and I want to buy it.
Gen 3 had some of the best designs, honestly. I do agree, yeah.
Flygon is still probably my favorite out of the entire roster. Just a cool little one. Never got its Mega Evolution. It hurts me to this day.
Yeah.
Aggron and Lairon, that entire design, like the big hulking metal boys.
So and the train noise that it makes as well. It kind of comes out and goes.
I mean, looking back at it, the Team Magma and Team Aqua was just the silliest thing, where it's just like, we need more water, and it's like, but we don't want this much water. Like Magma, we want more land, but not this much land. And it's just, that was.
I'll be very controversial. Actually, no. Ignoring. Actually, forget it. It's too late now. There's been too many generations. At one point, I would have said to you that Gen 3 was my least favourite gen. But then Gen 8 happened. And it's so bad. It makes, forget about it.
I didn't enjoy Sun and Moon too much.
No, I didn't even really. No.
I heard that X and Y was... I think the issue... it could be getting worse. It could just be us growing a little bit more disillusioned with what's essentially the same product.
It's getting worse.
I mean, yeah, in some ways. I remember, weirdly enough, my nan had the Pokemon Stadium themed N64, the blue and yellow one, the funky looking one. And it was either Stadium or Coliseum, whatever the N64 one was, because they made multiple versions of that kind of game. And the animations in that game are so much better than Pokemon Sword and Shield's animations. And
I've seen.
This is a game that came out right in the early 2000s. And I don't blame Game Freak for it. I just think the Pokemon Company don't give them enough money to deal with what they have to do. Like, their budget isn't big enough for a product that sells that well. And that's another 5-hour podcast talking about Game Freak and Pokemon Company.
That is a frequent thing that me and Jack talk about on Sandbox, and it's tiring. It's so frustrating, but that's that. But I will say, Gen 3 is a good pick. That wasn't my childhood game. I actually started at Gen 4.
See, I played way more of Gen 4. I had Pokemon Diamond and put 200 hours into it, which at the time is now we're in the age of thousands of hours in CSGO and Dota 2 and stuff like that. But for at the time, 200 hours was whoa, look how much time he's put into that game.
Yeah.
And I played that more, but I feel like Pokemon Emerald wasn't even my first introduction. We had Pokemon Yellow on a Game Boy Color when I was younger, younger than that. Didn't have a clue what was going on. I think Pokemon Emerald was that kind of time where I was consciously aware of what I was trying to do. I wasn't just mashing buttons and walking in a direction and hoping it all resolves itself. So it was that first point of playing, probably my first time playing a big RPG with any kind of sense of intentionality. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. This is the problem in front of me, and this is how I want to deal with it. So those are my childhood hits of just PlayStation 1 and Game Boy Advance games. Classic consoles.
I really, really enjoyed hearing you go through those. They all have such a great story behind them. I love it.
I just think the best thing still Advance Wars, looking back at it, just that kind of gameplay experience that seemed to go away with just the pass and play. It still exists, but it just doesn't seem to be the cultural phenomenon that it ended up being with something like Mario Kart DS.
Online play is just far more convenient now. It's not the same.
If you have usable internet, Jamie Wade, if you have usable internet. Oh,
Yes. Yeah, but in fairness, I mean, what are you gonna do right now? Are you gonna who are you gonna pass and play to right now?
I mean, so long as I keep a disinfectant wipe to wipe down the Game Boy Advance SP and people are happy to catch at a 2 meter distance, it can work. It can work.
So now, thank you for that. Sorry, did you have anything else you want to say?
No, I was literally going to say, but now I've also brought a curated collection of technically my top six, because my fifth is a joint place, all time hits.
So
Uh,
I'm just going to briefly explain how this is all going to work. So this next segment, we're going to talk about overall, childhood to adulthood. The whole selection, top 5 games of Niall's life, and I'm going to attempt. We'll see how it goes. All the guests that we get onto Hitbox, I'm going to attempt to do a weighted average of all their top 5 games, and given enough episodes and time, eventually some sort of top 10 even ranking of everyone's games is going to appear. But we'll see how that goes, because I fully suspect that everyone's going to have such a wide range of games that it's going to be like 5 games in each like joint tenth with like 5 games in it. But we'll see.
See who ends up in the Hitbox Hall of Fame. It's going to be Minecraft. It's going to be Minecraft at number 1. I can just feel it.
It is almost certainly going to be Minecraft at the top, yes.
But it's not going to be because of me, because spoiler alert for the listeners, no Minecraft in this. Distinct absence of Minecraft in my top 5.
That is, I'm not. Yeah, it's not in mine. I will add that. So me and Jack have provided some our top 5 to get the list going. So it's not like otherwise. Your top 5 will be the top 5.
The only top 5 that matters. I got the top 5, and I'm first and last on the Pokemon quiz at the same time.
But this podcast isn't about me and Jack, so I would like to hear your top 5. I will need a ranking. There needs to be ranks here.
Okay, I will rank them, but just to put another spanner in the works, my 5th one is actually joint.
I know.
So my 5th place is joint. So I've actually got top 6.
I'll allow it. Don't worry. I'll allow that.
I can pick between my joint my joint 5th place, but I feel like it's an interesting one to talk about, because I want to take you back to the grand old days of the start of the recession of 2008.
Oh, I wasn't expecting you to say that.
We're taking us back to 2008, an era, a time that was terrible, but we were probably too young to understand. But and essentially, what had happened is we had seen the release years earlier of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, but then from Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, the fighting game genre just seemed to die. It just disappeared for quite a lot of the 2000s, until one man who actually just left Capcom last month, a guy called Yoshinori Oni, or Yoshinori Ono, one or the other, because I'm terrible at names. He comes back and he single-handedly saves the genre with a release of a nice little game called Street Fighter 4, an absolute banging 2D fighting game. And I'll continue to talk about that as well, but after the release of that, Capcom decided, well, we can just make more, we can bring more back. And from that point, they brought back Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Fate of Two Worlds. And those are my joint, because there's some of the best 2D fighting games that I have memories of. But they're 2 different 2D fighting games that play in such drastically different ways. Because you play Street Fighter 4 and it's not particularly combo heavy. Like, you can if you put the time in.
Marvel
but it's all a
Capcom
footsies game.
It's ridiculous. Like, that whole game takes place in the air.
Yeah. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is one of those games where you want to show off and just put a demolition job on someone where it's just full of colors and full of chaos. And I feel like sometimes the best fighting games are the games that are almost deliberately broken to the point where they can be broken to the point where you can just see some wild stuff that would never work in anything else. I feel like it's kind of the same of watching like Super Smash Bros. Melee at a high level, but you're looking at it, it's like, this is something that I'm never ever going to be able to achieve. And just seeing it played at such a level is ridiculous. Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for pure style. I mean, it has substance as well, but pure aesthetic style. And I think Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 still look like a better product than Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite on a purely visual level. I still think they look better.
No, they for sure. Infinite is a complete misstep.
And Marvel vs. Capcom has kind of died, but it's weird because it's still alive. And I hate that I have to say in function because there's all the functional controversy about Infinite. It's like they don't miss the characters, they miss their functions. But on a functional level, Marvel vs. Capcom survives in a great little 2D fighting game called Dragon Ball Fighter Z or Fighters, which is the same kind of 3v3 over the top crazy combo kind of game that I put some time into, but was never nearly as good at that as I was at Marvel 3. And Street Fighter 4.
So I never played. I haven't played Dragon Ball Fighters, but I played Guilty Gear XR Sign a lot,
Yeah.
and that is just the best looking fighting game.
Oh, on a visual level, those games are just obscene. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting like game developers conference talk with the guy who animates it, and it's like him going on for like 45 minutes about all the methods that they did, and it's an interesting watch if you're into that kind of stuff. But I think if I have to rank them, I would have to put Marvel vs. Capcom 3 into 6th place and Street Fighter 4 into 5th place, because I got Street Fighter 4 the Easter of year 8, and I had no understanding of how to play fighting games, and I must have spent 2 weeks in the training mode, and because Street Fighter 4 had a great little combo system where you could start easy and it would put you into harder and harder combo challenges. And that's what brought me into fighting games that I play quite a lot now. And it's also what got me into the grappler boys. You know, why do a flashy combo if you can take half of somebody's health bar with one command grab, you know? Zangief, T-Hawk, you know, they're the boys of Street Fighter 4 and T-Hawk's Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, I think, but absolute belters.
No,
both
T-Hawk,
of them.
I think he's just Super Street Fighter, I think.
It's like so many different versions.
Oh, it's not
as bad as Street Fighter 2, but Street Fighter 4 still has too many versions.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my 5th and 6th, the 6th place that nobody asked for. And then, I am gonna see the next one. I'm trying to decide how to rank them, but I'm gonna go smaller in scale and talk about a really refined game that encapsulates local multiplayer in a way that I think's better than anything else. And I think there's an easy route to say something like Smash Bros. But I feel like the problem with Smash Bros. And Mario Kart and some of those other games is, although everyone complains about getting blue shelled, the best player will always win. And it's the same in this mostly, but the comeback mechanics in this game particularly, I think, are done really, really well. And that's Towerfall Ascension. Well, just Towerfall, but the PS4 release was Ascension. One of the few games I've bought across platforms. If it comes out on PS5, I'd buy that as well straight away.
I
a phenomenal
adore Towerfall. What an amazing game. So just the most tight mechanics. Yeah.
The most played game of the entirety of university that I spent was on that game. And it's one of those things where if you know you can consistently have, 4 people around and everyone just grabs a controller and, imagine having 4 people around to play a video game in today's times. But back in the good old days, having that many people around and just playing that game. And it was one of those games where, because the controls were so simplistic, had so much depth, you could introduce someone into Towerfall very, very quickly. And with the comeback mechanics, it never felt unfair. Like that person would get a shield, which seems like too much, but it was just enough to keep everybody in the game at all times. And if you really wanted to be hardcore, you could turn it all off. But just a phenomenal little game, and weirdly enough, the only thing to come out of what might be the worst console of all time.
Yeah.
Remember the
Ouya.
The Ouya.
Yeah.
The Ouya, for the listeners back home, the ill-fated Android console that was just a little bit naff, but
Literally just Towerfall came out of that, right? I don't think any other game came out of that.
It's just a Towerfall machine.
Yep.
But what a game to be a machine for! I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Fantastic little game. I bought it on the Switch as well, and the Switch put in like a 6 or 8 player mode that just adds more carnage. Just like even the PvE that you could do co-op had a right kind of level of challenge, and all the ways you could unlock new characters. And
I got that game originally for free on PlayStation Plus, and it's just completely blew me away. Like, oh, this is actually incredible. What? I've never heard.
I think
of this.
if you were going to give me one game that I was going to play as a local multiplayer, and I could only have that, I'd probably end up sticking with Towerfall. I know Smash can offer you a bit more variety, but I think Towerfall also, the gameplay itself is very good, but it also, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later with Halo, but it gave you the tools to create your own kind of custom games and really diversify the experience that you had. So you could end up playing 10 hours of Towerfall, and every 2 hours could be a radically different experience, even though the mechanics are quite similar. So yeah, Towerfall Ascension, absolute cracker of a game by Matt Makes Games.
Yep.
And he also did Celeste after that as well, which is another little phenomenal game on the Switch that is too difficult for me to finish. Don't judge me.
You didn't finish it?
I haven't finished Celeste.
Oh, Celeste.
It's one of those games that
it is hard.
I keep wanting to get back to it. I keep wanting to get back to it, but just haven't.
The music in that game
done it yet.
Awesome. I used to listen to the soundtrack when I was doing my dissertation, and it's just like really nice vibes. It's really good.
I mean, on one hand you've got the Celeste soundtrack, on the other hand you've got lo-fi hip hop beats to study you to relax to. The classic channel. And moving on into third place, because I've mentioned Halo, so we're going to jump to Halo. Ooh. Halo Reach for the Xbox 360.
So this
absolute cracker.
This is an interesting one for me because never owned an Xbox, and so I've never played Halo. I've played it once or twice at a friend's house co-op, but that's never been a franchise I've had any sort of awareness about.
So, like, we're men in our 20s. How do we not have the Halo experience growing up? But Halo Reach isn't objectively that much better of a game than Halo 3. I think Halo Reach built upon what a lot of Halo 3 did. Mm-hmm. Also added a couple of elements that people didn't like about reticule bloom. So firing at range, your reticule will get bigger and bigger. So a lot of the time it would give people better opportunities to escape firefights and stuff like that. But the reason I put Reach higher is because Halo 3 came out when I was like 10 years old, and I didn't have an Xbox at the time. Right. But Halo Reach came out 13 and a half, the perfect age in the era of Xbox Live and being that snarky, high-pitched kid on there, you know.
That is
all that shebang.
Yeah, pretty much.
And one of those little monsters. And but Halo Reach offers the same kind of thing that Halo 3 did, where the core shooting gameplay was fantastic. In a way, I think the experience bottled down to its like purest form. Maybe Call of Duty 4 was more entertaining on a moment-to-moment basis because that was the game that it was directly competing against. But the thing about Halo Reach is just the ways in which it could be played. So you could do the entire campaign fully cooperative, and the campaign had all these different skull modifiers that would radically change the way the game was played. So you could do that all co-op, all solo, whatever difficulty you wanted. It was adaptable to what you wanted it to be. Then they had a PvE firefight mode, which was like the dawn of, you know, that, and Gears of War had the Horde mode, and it just exploded this PvE experience. And then the multiplayer was just very, very good at the same time, but it also had custom games that allowed you to modify and really like high levels of detail, the way in which you would want the game to be played. And then on top of that, you had Forge World, which allowed you to build all these new maps. And maps were so good that Bungie ended up putting a lot of them into rotation. So the community would make maps, and then those maps would do well. And all those maps that you created, and add to that another element, because Halo Reach just keeps throwing more stuff at you. A theater mode that allowed you to do whatever kind of camera angles and effects and filters you wanted onto your gameplay clips and photos. And all of that could be shared through a file share system and on BungieNet. So anything you could create could just be shared with everyone. Mm-hmm. So the best maps, you could always find the best maps, because you could always search for the most downloaded maps or the highest rated maps. So there was always an influx of user-created experiences that you could access on Halo Reach. So it's one of those things where moment-to-moment Call of Duty 4 might have been more addictive, the grind to level up and prestige and go and go and go. But Halo Reach just offered so many different ways in which you could play that game. And I think just offering you that level of experiences means that I have to give it so much credit, because it's a game that you could play for years and still have radically different experiences with. Yeah, phenomenal little game, Halo Reach. And a little bit of somber storytelling as well, because if you know the story of Halo, you know that everybody here pretty much has to die. And the last level is you just surviving as long as you can in like a horde situation until you can't hold out anymore. And then like you die, your character just dies at the end of the game. Spoiler alert for people listening to a 10-year-old game. And and you just see your helmet on the ground, it's all shattered, and this big speech monologue over the top of it about how because of your sacrifice everything happened, and you see Reach regenerate back to this like living planet again because of the sacrifices you made. And phenomenal again. Great story, great experiences, great ways to create content and share the content. And phenomenal game.
High praise.
High praise. I rate Halo Reach so much, and I think realistically, all that praise could be put onto Halo 3. Mm-hmm. I think it's just the time in which I experienced it made Halo Reach a little bit more special for me. Mm-hmm. And then my second place is, I think, a game that this is purely my favorite games of all time. But if you were to ask me what I think objectively the best game of all time is, I'm going to throw in at my second place The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, a Nintendo Switch launch game and final game for the Wii U. Maybe final big game for the Wii U.
It's just like, goes without saying. There's nothing... It's just it takes the freedom. It's bizarre, isn't it? It takes the freedom of the original NES Zelda, and even though that sounds ridiculous for a modern game, you realize that true freedom doesn't exist in most open world games. This game is true freedom. So cool. I
think even on a minute level, even just experiencing the climbing system in Breath of the Wild, you go back and play anything else, and it's like, why is this? Why can't I? Like, I'm a 6'5" super soldier. Why can't I climb over this little bit of rock that's stopping me? This shouldn't be a difficult task. And it's just, I think no game's perfect. I think there's always issues with every game. I think Breath of the Wild has a couple of issues, I think. The frame rate could be a little bit steadier. Like, you go to the Korok Forest where the Master Sword is, and the game just slows down, and it's puffing for air. And would I like full-blown voice acting throughout the whole thing outside of cutscenes? Probably. But everything that it tries to do, it executes so well. I feel like sometimes you play a game and very much from the start what it wants you to do, and you're always nudged to perform in the way that it wants you to. You play Breath of the Wild and it just feels like an adventure in its purest sense.
I've never played a game that has nailed exploration better. Like, most games, there's a reason I'm exploring because I want to get some shiny thing that they're dangling in front of me. But Breath of the Wild, you find I know you obviously you do get rewarded for it, but I wasn't exploring for that. I was exploring because like I really want to know what is at the top of that peak.
Yeah.
I want to know, and there's always something there.
And I mean and I think the way the game conditions you to understand its environments is, because I was thinking about it before, because Breath of the Wild is a weird game for me where I'll play it non-stop for 3 weeks and then not touch it for 8 months and then go back to it. So I still actually have to finish Trials of the Master Sword and then finally go defeat Ganon. But I've spent about 85 hours in the game, but I've just decided like once I've beaten Ganon, I'm done with it. So I'm leaving that to like the last thing. But the way where you can always tell where there's a Korok seed before it gives it to you, you look at it like that shouldn't be there. Like I understand the rules of play so well that shouldn't be there. There's a Korok seed underneath that.
Yeah.
And the ways in which you just experience new things which you didn't think were going to happen. So the 3 dragons that are in the game, I forgot what they're called. They've got weird names.
Oh, cool.
And the first time you see them and you're just like, I had no clue in the slightest that these things exist.
And the
music, and you see them stumbling along.
And the music that plays with them as well. It's just an epic moment. At truly like actually using the word epic properly, everything stops. Whatever you were doing stops, and you look up, and it's really huge. It's so awesome. And
I think there's something more meaningful for the fact that you can't kill it, that you're going to just take a shard off of it, because it just shows like that there's bigger things in play than you. You're just this little nightman.
Yep, exactly.
And there's another few things that I got to experience without previous warning, like Eventide Island. I saw that on my hand of the map, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I can get to that. And I made a bunch of stamina potions because I just didn't have enough stamina vessels to be able to do it. And I just went there, got there, and it's like, you're losing all your stuff. And I'm like, fantastic.
Yep.
And it's just phenomenal little experience.
I remember going somewhere, it was one of the towns, and there's a shrine that is just on a tiny little island in the middle of the sea, really far away from the coast. And I remember trying to glide to it really early on, and being like, and not being able to make it, and having I couldn't do it, ran out of stamina, and just the satisfaction of coming back to that. I remembered that, like I'm getting you coming back later when you've unlocked more stamina and getting to it. It's just, you know what you're getting. It's a shrine, but like, it's just the way it does discovering, and cool, just a cool.
And you have all the tools to deal with things, even in ways that I don't think the game designers were expecting you to be able to do. There's so many ways that I've somehow been able to jank my way through certain conundrums, but just because it gives you all the tools and it trusts that you know how to use them. Like even the simple things like, oh, I can't climb this thing that's rainy and this is frustrating. It's like, oh, no worries. I'll just create a fire, use the updraft and skip the entire need to climb altogether because I know that that's the function and how that works. Or even weird things like one of the lizard boomerangs that's metallic. You can throw it, and when it comes back to you, you can use the magnesis and you can grab it and it will just spin indefinitely. So you end up having like a lawnmower just in front of you that you could just walk into enemies with this spinning boomerang. It's like, I would have no clue this would work. And you can tell they've really thought about how they want to introduce those systems. Like you go up to the Goron village and they have those what feel like roller coasters on like the little mine carts.
Yeah.
And the first time I got to that, I was like, this is just such a great little idea that they've done. And yeah, just phenomenal game. The combat feels like you feel rewarded for how you've progressed because it's like you naturally get stronger. And I think that's in some way that the game feels a little bit not as great as it could be because you get to a point where you're so strong that the only thing that really presents a risk it's just a Lionel.
The initial challenge that you get from that game, and it does start off genuinely quite hard. Like you die real quick, and you know if you walk over too far to Hyrule Castle, you know there's loads of guardians, and they will kill you. And it's definitely the first half of the game that you play is the best because you are weak. You need to think more. You do become too tanky later on.
Yeah. And I think that weakness is what encourages you to go in different avenues to try to make things work. Like, even if it's, because everyone's seen that first experience on the plateau where you just knock over the rock and it like crushes a couple of like bokoblins or something, and you're like, it's that kind of mentality that you have to just use all the time. So like, get a tree trunk, knock it down, stasis it, hit it enough times with whatever terrible rusty weapon you have, and just hope that this thing clears them all out in one go. Otherwise, you just have to run. And it's just a phenomenal little game, and hoping for that sequel information soon. It's been too long, Nintendo. We want to Friday, maybe. Friday, maybe.
Hopefully.
I have heard. Hopefully.
It's about bloody time. Come on. They haven't talked about games for ages now. They haven't got any games except for Pikmin 3. Who cares?
And I think it's going to be one of those cases where Nintendo need to amp it up, because they're not going to get as many third-party ports as people transition to get things onto PlayStation 5. You can't, getting something like The Witcher 3 onto Switch was a marvel.
Yeah.
But getting something that's traditionally going to be on the new next-gen systems, trying to drag that all the way back to the Switch is just, there's miracles and then there's just technological impossibilities. And I think that's the point where Nintendo really has to start churning out first parties with a greater degree of regularity. Otherwise, there's going to be very little reason to go back to it.
They need to, obviously, they need their tentpoles. And honestly, there hasn't been, it's a bit concerning now. Like, they haven't had a tentpole game for a while now. And they need to, in between those, put out more smaller games. Like, they need to get smaller devs. I mean, honestly, like, they either contract it out, which they've done. There's like Capcom have made quite a few Nintendo games. They made a Zelda game. They made like Oracle Seasons and Ages, I think. Do more stuff like that. Like, outsource some more of their properties to fill in the gaps a bit more between tentpoles.
And then I think they can make their games last longer than I think they realize. So like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the highest selling game on Switch, with like millions and millions and millions and millions of units sold. And that's still selling weekend, every quarter they're posting the sales numbers for it. Just add another batch of DLC to your existing titles. Find a way to remonetize the products that are already there. And I don't mean in like a battle pass in and sell FIFA packs equivalents into your games, but
I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is that ship sailed. I'm not buying it. I had it on Wii U, right? I'm not. I refuse to buy it again. I'm not buying it again. This is a great time to bring out a more experimental Mario Kart 9, something more like Double Dash again, and get in like the character specific items again. Just go a little bit more crazy. Would be really nice.
I mean, I think that's the best thing to do from a gamer experience perspective, but just on a purely like cynical monetary perspective, I think that this game has the highest install base of pretty much anything out there.
They're not going to do it.
You think they would just
They're not going to do it.
Why don't they just monetize
the success of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? And I do think it's too late for DLC for that game. I really do think that is. They could have done that, but now it's just.
There's bound to be another Mario Party. That's.
I hope so. I hope it's a good
given.
one.
I think. I think the mini games were great in the last one. I just don't think it gave you enough ways to play around on the board. I want more shenanigans on the. Yeah, the boards. There was not enough options attached to them. But if they're not going to release DLC for that, then you have to think that they've got enough leftover mini games and ideas brewing that they're just going to make another one. I think because they churn those out with.
Oh, sorry.
They churn them out very quickly, so you'd expect them to have another one out within the next year to 18 months.
Well, I miss like the unique objectives of the different boards. Like you'd have, it wasn't just get the most stars. It was, but you need to there were like interesting objectives that you had to do in order to get the stars.
Yeah.
Way more interesting. Give me your number one.
But I was gonna say, do you want the final, the greatest hit, the creme de la creme?
I really do.
Of Niall's introductory hitbox. We're gonna go for the quite literally the Empire Strikes Back of sci-fi video gaming. Mass Effect 2. Just my favorite game of all time. I think I've played through it 8 or 9 times, each one with a duration of about 30 hours, because I'll do all the side quests. I think the same with Zelda, where some things aren't perfect with it anymore, and I think the people's experiences with I think one thing that's gone recently, you see the moral binary in games. You know how you had Fable 2 and Fable 3 where it's like, do the good thing, do the evil thing.
That's completely gone, isn't it?
Yeah. It's gone because I think people want the nuance of being like, well, this is good and bad. There's other implications here. You know, they want complex and characters with shades of grey as opposed to an angel or just the worst dude alive. You know.
I love that. It was always so funny with this types of games. The two options are do the right thing, the normal, ordinary thing, or do you help the lady cross the road, or do you shoot her and her family? It was always.
Or do you just push her in front of a bus?
Yeah. Exactly.
Or in this, or back in the Fable 2 days, it's are you nice to this town, or do you sacrifice every single member of this town?
Yeah.
And then do you sacrifice your family at the end of the game to get this legendary super weapon? I was like, Peter Molyneux, you are insane. Your games always overpromise and under-deliver, but my God, did Fable 2 have its moments? Yeah, Mass Effect 2, I think, from a character perspective, it was just better than anything I had experienced. Just the entire cast was just phenomenal.
Yep.
The story was great. I played Mass Effect 2 before I played Mass Effect 1, which was weird, but it was that kind of time.
So Mass Effect is, interestingly, another gap in my knowledge. I never played any Mass Effect game. They look fantastic.
Well, I mean, the most recent one isn't what people wanted it to be, but the original trilogy, chef's kiss, phenomenal. But yeah, the characters were all interesting. They kind of reduced the RPG mechanics that were a bit more prevalent in the first one. That I went back and played that. There's a lot more character building and all this kind of stuff. Mass Effect 2 was a bit more streamlined. But the individual, so you would have the whole game was structured around a few big central main story missions, character recruitment missions, because I think they did a really good thing that makes Mass Effect 2 better than Mass Effect 3 and better than Mass Effect 1. Because Mass Effect 1, it's the world's going to end, everything's over, doom, disaster, massive grand scale. And Mass Effect 3 was everything's going to end, massive grand scale. Mass Effect 2 was this is a problem that's just affecting the humans. You're the human representative. Go and do something about it. But because it's smaller, it's all about build your Ocean's 11 style team of crack operatives to go and do this mission that's built, what you're doing from the start of the game. In the same way that Zelda starts you off as go kill Ganon. It's the same thing in Mass Effect where it's do the suicide mission. But it doesn't give you the option to do it straight away. You have to build everything up. But you do your recruitment missions and it get introduced to all these interesting characters that have really in-depth backstories and all these different possibilities of how you interact with them. And then you get a loyalty mission that gives you greater depth, and it really just adds different elements, different sides to them. And as you build, and the great thing about them is it gives you content, it adds some depth to the characters, but it kind of builds your attachment to the characters during that time because you've seen what they've gone through. So the risk of having them die on you then becomes so much greater because you don't want these people to die. And from the start of Mass Effect 2, they told you, well, your save will go to Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
So it's if your favorite character is dead, well, they're dead for the next one, unless you want to replay. So, but that kind of felt a little bit cheap to be I'll just replay it, I'll make sure they're alive. Yeah. So yeah, you felt this impetus to make sure that everyone's good, but then people start fighting with each other. And the problem another one of those problems where you're bound by that moral binary of if you're a good enough character, you can solve this dilemma and nobody will die.
Yep.
If you've been picking based on the circumstances, sorry, a few of your characters are going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it. But
so,
it's a phenomenal game.
That is a fantastic list of games, and you have described them and your reasons why they exist on this list eloquently. I really enjoyed listening to that. I'm gonna put them on the list. Okay. In fact, so they're they're on the list.
Dynamic graphic just appears.
You wait.
Yeah.
So, as I said before, this list hasn't actually got Jack's games on there yet. They still need to be added. So at the moment, it's just mine and yours, which of course means that
Breath of the Wild.
Well, funny you say that. So I'm really. It's a bit unfair because your list is set in stone, whereas mine, I control the list. And honestly, I thought I was happy with my list, and then it kind of changes in my head every time I look at it. So this might be subject to change, which is very unfair, but it's my podcast, it's my rules. So I need to assign the rankings real quick, and then we can have a look at. I'm going to give Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is on the list, but it's only honorary at the moment, because it will be the only game which is in 6th place, and it's not joint with anything.
One honorary place to give it, though. What a game! What a game!
So this is an eclectic list, and I really like it. Oh, one sec. Have I messed this up? Let me see. I got.
Now, I remember I failed to mention with Marvel vs. Capcom 3 how just one character was the most broken character of all time, and it was just hilarious playing every game with this one character where you played with Phoenix, and if you had 5 levels of meter, when she died, she resurrected as Dark Phoenix with the most ridiculous moveset. You did that.
Yeah. I thought you meant Phoenix Wright.
X Factor.
Because Phoenix Wright was in it too.
No, because but she dies, and you hear this like audio cue that's like the Dark Phoenix rises, and then before you know it, your entire screen is just filled with projectiles everywhere you go.
A brilliant game. I loved using all of their ultimates all in one go as well. It's just so dumb. Yeah. All of these voices,
and they were so stylish as well for that time as well. Because I think Street Fighter 4 did very good ultra combos. Like there's a few of them that I can remember quite well. Like Abel's one where he hits them a couple of times, like swings them up into the air and jumps, and like the camera's like dynamic and it moves.
Okay.
The Marvel vs. Capcom 3 ones were ridiculous.
So the list, I'm not happy with my number 1. I have to say, it's definitely needs to be somewhere, but controversial maybe. So at the moment, number 1 on the Hitbox list is joint between Mass Effect 2 and Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver. I went with my heart on that one.
Your Heart Gold?
I actually had Heart Gold as well. I think it was the Pokewalker, which gave some. I had so much fun with the Pokewalker. Anyway, also a really good pedometer as well, which is really funny. Second place is joint between Zelda Breath of the Wild and Persona 4. Third on the list is joint between Halo Reach and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Honestly, I feel like, again, this is a bit of a controversial one for me because technically I have more memories with Brawl, honestly. But like Ultimate is just such an insanely crazy roster, and it's hard not to have that on there. Number 4 is joint between Towerfall and Civilization 5. And
the
fifth place is joint between Street Fighter 4 and Undertale. With and then in sixth place with 0 points is Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
Marvel vs. Capcom 3, banger of a game.
So there we have it.
Those two games saved the fighting game genre. Always have to pay respects to them.
So
that sounds like a good list.
It's eclectic.
It is a mix.
So it's interesting about my decision to put Civ on there, because I feel like Civ, it's not like any other game. It's like chess. It's kind of weird to put it alongside, bloody Persona. It's very different. But
yeah.
Anyway, so this is.
I would have bought Civ, but because they had the Switch version, I thought that would be really good to have in the university house where everyone could play on the Switch. But then they had no multiplayer on it, so I was like, like, what? It was
Civ 5 and Civ 6 are my joint most played games of all time. So,
see, my most played game of all time is a game I actually despise, which is a funny little contrast. Defense of the Ancients 2.
Interesting.
I played a lot of Dota 2 in my time, but it's a game where it's just not fun. It's just hyper competitive to the extent where it's just no longer enjoyable.
Right, we are gonna have to wrap up this podcast now. We're going to finish the podcast with another. We'll call it a game. This one is it's going to accumulate across episodes. I would like to create. The gamer gods have. They talked to me. They came down from. They actually came up from hell. The gamer gods. They live with the rock gods, and they wanted me to create the perfect game. And I thought the best way of doing that is by asking a range of guest panelists to do so. So this perfect game, I'm going to be asking each guest to add an element to the perfect game.
Ooh.
And then we're going to have some sort of amalgamation forming. I don't know how we're going to do things like genre, right? But I feel like it should be a first come, first serve type thing. So you can either go for something really, really specific, or you can just go right out there with setting or genre or anything you want. Anything, give me an element to add to this.
See, I don't want to shut down people's creativity, because you could be silly with it. You could be like, it's a collectible trading card game, but I'm not going to do that because I want to be kind to the next person that follows me along.
Can you imagine?
Just like, we want to do this, but it's actually a collectible trading card game.
You don't have to choose genre. You can do something less important if you want. It's all good.
Well, the problem is, if I try to go with an approach that will please everyone, it will just end up like Anthem. Just tries to do everything at once and does none of it well.
Yep.
And that's not the best game. Nobody wants Anthem. I'm sorry, Anthem. I love you, BioWare, but no, stop trying to make Anthem happen. Let's make the genre about vehicle driving and construction, Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts style. Let's make some wacky vehicles. Everyone likes Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, the best game in the Banjo-Kazooie franchise.
I love it how
death threats out of nowhere.
You made a joke about saying collectible card game. And that is more restrictive, but I would argue vehicle driving construction is also fairly niche. But I love it. That's locked in.
But you could go many different ways with vehicles. It could be post-apocalyptic.
This is the perfect game of all time. This is the game of gods. We are making the perfect game. So it is official. Despite Niall's list which contains no vehicle driving and construction games. That is the ideal form of a video game.
I'm sorry, but if you write down Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, that's like sacrilege, because it's a beyond that. It just exists, like it's transcended any kind of list. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, those perfectly squared Banjo and Kazooie faces. Everyone loves that game.
So, thank you very much for joining me today to talk
Thank
about
you
video
very
games.
much for having me, but for happening. Thank you, Jamie, for happening. Oh,
That's very
thank you very much for having me.
This was episode 1 of Hitbox. Please, if you do enjoy this video, please get your friends and family to subscribe, and check out anything else on our channel. You're welcome. I give you permission to like all of the videos on the channel. Please, by all means. I won't be offended. Have a lovely day, and goodbye.